Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you here to share in my misery, so you all can delight in my misfortune. Have a little schadenfreude, if you will. What we got here today is a 1988 Ford Mustang GT. Now, I bought this jewel from northern Indiana, right around Indianapolis. You know, driven in the snow, in the rain, getting all kinds of salt, getting all rusty. So, it doesn't surprise me that this car has a lot of rust. But, I got the vehicle pretty cheap. So, I didn't really mind that. And it's not like I've done this kind of work. Haven't done this kind of work before. So, it's not beyond my capabilities. You know, the first thing first was the frame rails were completely rotted out. So normally on these cars you would have the shock towers would rot right in this area here. And that was the case on this car. But normally it's not that bad. Normally you just take this flat spot here, you cut that out, you get your flat piece of metal and you weld it on there and you call it good. You just paint and get on with your life. But in this case, you never really know what you got until you actually take it apart and poke and prod around and, you know, figure out what's what. In this case, these frame rails were so bad, they were rotted clean through the other side, and it amazed me that the actual front suspension didn't just fall out the damn car. So basically what I had to do was take the entire shock tower, well, not the entire shock tower, basically this whole bottom section, all the way clean through the other side, come up here, come down here, back here, you know, and go down, completely cut it out on both sides, get a donor vehicle, cut that out, and basically patch it in. And, you know, this is the result. It come out pretty nice. You know, and I went ahead and painted the engine bay because to me it's a lot easier to paint the engine bay than put the fenders and the hood and everything on the car. And you spray everything in one shot. You don't have to worry about having a bunch of parts laying around and, you know, this, that, and the other. But I knew that the next thing I was going to have to do was the floor pans. And that's where we run into significant issues. So basically what we got is a menagerie of bullshit. So just looking at it, yeah, it looks like rust. But it's what the person did to kind of, you know, mitigate the situation, you know, to try to temporarily solve the problem. So if you look down here, you got this piece right here, which is an aftermarket set of subframe connectors. You know, you put these in the car to, you know, stiffen up the frame on a unibody car. Basically, the floor pan was so rotted out, he had to use the subframe connector to act as the mounting point for the seat. So that was basically the only thing keeping his ass from falling through the floor of the car, and you probably get the picture of what happened. But to top it all off, you got this business here. Just some cheap ass pieces of steel. Don't know where the fuck it came from. It don't matter. But yeah, just it's like, come the fuck on. Why you gotta do this? So I gotta deal with that. And even better, you come to the other side of the car. And it's amazing that he even, you know, thought of this, put the time and effort into it. But you have a floor pan underneath a fucking floor pan. Amazing. And it wouldn't even be so bad if he welded it in, but what is that? That is a goddamn pop rivet. So he pop riveted this frame, and I'll take that back. He might even, nope, they're pop rivets. There for a second, he might have sheet metal screwed that thing on there, but nope, just pop rivets. So this is what it looks like underneath. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty original. The original sheet metal there. Oh no. No. Fucking dumbasses. So, normally what any person that does this kind of work would do would be to call up their, nearest parts supplier, MPD, any of the Mustang shops that, sell sheet metal. And they just order them a whole new fucking floor pan. Maybe about $350 to $375 for a whole new pan. But I'm not gonna do that. I mean, the reason being is aftermarket floor pans, they fucking suck. They don't fit right. You have to do all kinds of persuasion to get them to fit right, and they usually don't match up, and it's, in general, it's just a damn pain in the ass. So I got two options here. I can either order a piece of the floor, which they make these floor pans in half sections, quarter sections, front and back, left and right. And I could just cut out the parts of the floor that are bad and then take the pieces off the aftermarket sheet metal that I need and just patch those in instead of doing the whole thing or doing, I'm not even going to do that. Luckily, I have a donor car that I got for about $150. So I'm just going to cut the pieces of the floor pan out of that donor car that I need, and I'm going to patch them in there. So, just by looking at this, it looks horrible, but I can cut from here, down here, over here, back here, along this outer rocker panel here, and underneath this cross brace, and that will completely take out every piece of rust that I need to get out of there. And it's not that big of a deal. Up in the front, I have this pillar will have to be cut out, sectioned a little bit, same here. And then the rocker panel itself, I'd have to patch in here, which actually I'm probably going to go much further back on the rocker panel just to make sure I get all the rust out of it. And, those pieces are good on my donor car too, so I have that all, taken care of. And then on the front part of the floor pan, up here in this corner, you see it, it's rotted, and it's the same thing on the passenger side. So it's mainly just a lot of smaller spots that I can cut out and just patch in versus cutting out the whole floor pan and dealing with that for several months just to get it right. So basically that's what I'm gonna do. And it's not a complicated job to do. You just, anybody with a grinder with a cutoff wheel or an air grinder, it's easy to cut this shit out. And I'll take I'll take video of it. And like the sound deadening I put on this shit, it comes out real easy too. Just get you a cheapo Harbor Freight heat gun and paint scraper, and you'll be fine. But anyway, I just want to bring everybody up to speed with what the hell I'm doing here, and just stick around. I'll show you how I'm gonna do this. So I'm back for day 3. As you can see, I got most of the rotted material cut out, both driver's side and the passenger side. So what I got left here is back here on this cross brace. I gotta cut this out, and unfortunately when I went to cut the floor pans out on my donor vehicle, I got a little overzealous on my plasma cutting, so I don't have a patch piece that make this right angle here. So I'm just gonna have to get some sheet metal and, you know, fabric cobble something together to make that work. But all in all, I got the driver's side floor pan out yesterday on that car, so I got something to work with there. But the thing about it is that I didn't think about this before, was that my donor vehicle is a convertible. Well, they're the same floor pans, but they add all of this extra material. This goes on the top side of the floor pan where it meets the inner rocker panel, and then they put this underneath the outer rocker panel. So I had to drill all those spot welds off there and get that material off just to end up with a usable floor pan here. So that's all been taken care of. That's ready to go in. Like I said, I need to just clean this part up here, make something to replace that. And on the center rocker panel here, I got to cut that material off there, which luckily the inner rocker panels are still good, so I don't have to worry about that. But the other thing I found was that whenever I get close to this cross brace here, I still got some rust here, and I didn't originally intend to take this front seat brace out, but I'm gonna have to do it. So I'm gonna have to go down this whole thing all the way across and drill all those spot welds out just to get that piece out of there. And you know, I got spot welds up here in the front I gotta do, and I think the material underneath the brace is actually still good. It's just got surface rust on it. But I'm going to take it off there, and I'm going to make damn sure that, you know, there's nothing else major going on under there. You know, just to be on the safe side. One of the things I forgot to mention too is that when you're cutting out floor pans like this, I didn't really notice that these fuel lines here and my brake lines were under there. Luckily, when I was, you know, cutting, I caught it, and you know, I managed not to cut into those lines. But that's something, you know, you need to be aware of when you're doing this sort of thing, because you know, cutting a fuel line, you know, you can start a fire. But at the same time, you don't want to go replacing a bunch of crap that, you know, you didn't really intend to do. I mean, these lines aren't cheap. If you buy them from the you know, the parts stores like MPD or LMR or something like that. You know, you want to try to salvage as much stuff as you can. And another thing I forgot to mention too is that whenever you're grinding on the inside of a car like this, you have to keep in mind that you have glass in here. So whenever you're grinding, cover up your windshield. I mean, I use paper, sure, yeah, sparks hit it, and it's flammable, probably highly unlikely, but if the sparks hit the glass, you're gonna have pock marks in your windshield that it won't come out. I mean, you will effectively ruin your windshield if you're grinding and welding, you know, around glass. So just make sure that's covered up. But I'm gonna get back at it and get some stuff done. And you know, just stick around and watch and learn. So I want to talk about the tools that I'm using to do this job. Really, there's nothing I got that is particularly fancy or outrageously expensive. You know, most of my tools are basically cheap junk you can get just about anywhere. I mean, you know, hammers. Probably have at least one body hammer. Air chisels come in pretty damn handy, because you know, when you're drilling spot welds, they don't exactly get all the welded portion out, so you got to separate the panel somehow. And these little air chisels come in, you know, really handy. Got your right angle air grinder here. This is actually a Ingersoll, so is this one here, and this one I actually, you know, put some money into these, and they serve me pretty well. But all three of those you can get at your Harbor Freight or Fraud or whatever you want to call it. You can get them pretty cheap, and they'll definitely do the job. But this particular right angle air grinder is really nice, because it cuts like a hot knife through butter on sheet metal. But at the same time, the problem with those is they use a lot of air. So, you know, I got a 60-gallon compressor, and it's not a great one. I mean, I picked that up at Rural King probably about 10 years ago. So I mean, but yeah, it'll definitely use a lot of air, and occasionally, if I'm, you know, cutting away for a long time, I'll have to let the compressor catch up. But as far as this air hammer and this cutoff wheel here, I mean, I bought these at Walmart probably about 20 years ago, and I mean, I got them cheap, and they've lasted and lasted and lasted. So I see no reason to spend a whole crap ton of money on anything else. I'll run them till they're dead. So another thing I got to use is these damn spot weld cutters. So I mean, if you look at it, it's got, you know, it's basically a hole saw with a spring arbor here. So whenever you're drilling away at a spot weld, you know, you got the arbor to, you know, hold your center, and it pushes in. You cut around the spot weld there. These things, they just fucking suck. I mean, there's no other way to put it. These teeth like to break off, and you know, they just don't last for shit. You could sit there and you can cut one spot weld and it'll break, or you can cut 20 spot welds and break. You know, you never know when it's gonna decide to have a high speed come apart. But you know, I don't recommend going to Harbor Freight and buying these, because they're worse than junk. But this is Blair brand, I believe, and these hold up fairly well. I mean, a pack of 3 of these cutters, you know, I can typically get whatever I need to get done, but it is what it is. And then for just getting paint and rust and stuff off, I just use the old DeWalt grinder with a cut brush. Nothing fancy. And that's basically what I use for 99.9% of all sheet metal work I do on a car. I mean, I'm working on this one to put floor pans in. I got my 1965 back there in the background. It's got new floor pans, new cowl panel. I had to do some work on the rear quarter panel. I mean, it was all done using this shit right here. And you know, you don't need fancy ass tools to do this. And you know, as far as my welder goes, so I was gonna talk about this welder before my camera decided to rudely decided it wanted to do an update in the middle of filming. You know, like so an old Lincoln Wirematic 255 is what I use. 24 thousandths wire with what is it, 70 20 75 25 argon CO2 mix. I can't remember. I'm not a professional welder. I know enough to get the job done, but yeah, I'm not a pro welder. So you know, it took me some research to, you know, basically figure out how to not blow holes in sheet metal. And you know, that was what was recommended to me, you know, using a 23 thousandths to 24 thousandths diameter wire with gas, and then just basically get the volts and wire speed set to, you know, where you're not burning through, and you know, you can't really go wrong. But as far as these welders go, is you know, something like this, you could probably find it on Craigslist for a couple $100. And I think I traded a handgun for this. So I mean, you know, there's deals to be had. Or you can go out and buy one of the fancy new ones for about $1,000 that actually, you know, you tell it what gauge metal you're actually welding, and it'll set everything up for you. Love to have one, but I'm just too much tight ass. So just, you know, go to your pawn shops, go to Craigslist, you can get you one of these. But you know, that's what we're working with. I mean, if you're gonna get into this sort of shit, you don't have to be a pay pig to the Snap-on tool truck. I mean, you can get this done, you know, fairly reasonable. Just it's not how much you spend on your tools. It's whether or not you've got the right damn tool. And I mean, you can figure that out. You go a long way. But I am gonna go ahead and, you know, get cranking on this and follow along. So I can pretty much tell that it's gonna be one of those fucking days. If you saw, I was blowing holes in the sheet metal at the beginning. Basically I just had to glob the shit on to fucking fill the hole back up. I'm probably gonna have to grind it down flat, look at the bottom side, make sure it actually, you know, welded all the way through, and then I'm probably gonna have to fix some spots, you know, where it didn't penetrate all the way. Like I said, I'm not the world's greatest welder, but you know, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta put one of those fucking inspirational posters on the wall, like Perseverance or something. Yeah, do whatever you gotta do, get the fucking job done. You know, what it boiled down to is my welder, I had it set for 16 gauge, and this is not 16 gauge, this is actually thinner. But whenever I did get it set, you know, that's what I want my welds to look like. You know, it pretty much lays down flat, it ain't blowing through, and you know, just generally looks a lot better. But you know, you're still gonna have problems as you're going along doing this. I mean, you're gonna have spots where it's just, you know, it's gonna blow through, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. One thing that you can do to help yourself out is you're blowing holes and you got to fill those holes back in. You know, get your piece of copper pipe, cut it down the middle, lay it flat, and then put it up behind your weld, and then weld your hole closed, because the weld itself, you know, won't actually stick to copper, and it gives you a backer to, you know, keep you from blowing it out even worse. I mean, this is one thing I use every once in a while to, you know, kind of deal with it. But most of the time, like if I got a hole, like say right here, I'll go on the leading edge of the weld. I'll hit that leading edge there and build it up, let it cool off, you know, hit it again, and just let it cool off. Eventually it'll build up and it'll get the hole closed shut. You don't want to sit there and just, you know, blast metal and, you know, blast your MIG wire into that hole and just keep everything hot. It's just going to keep, you know, wallering out and, you know, make the hole even bigger. So just, you know, hit where you previous welded, let it cool, hit it again, let it cool, hit it again, let it cool, and it'll close that hole up. But another thing I found when I was going along is I have this crack here. Now, this is what's going to happen to your car if you don't deal with the problem when it rears its ugly head. So, I mean, effectively, he had, you know, 50% of his floor pan gone. So, there's really no support on this floor, except for, you know, what we had with the subframe connector actually holding the, you know, the seat up. But basically there was no metal around where the seat frame bolted to the floor, so this whole transmission tunnel was just allowed to sit there and flex and roll and twist and do all kinds of crazy shit while I was driving down the road, and this is basically what you end up with. So I mean, you got to remember, these are unibody cars. The actual sheet metal itself is the support for the entire car. I mean, the frame, there's not a full frame underneath these cars. The frame actually stops right here, and as you can see, there's a front of the firewall right there. I mean, you only got about 3 feet of frame there, and then it stops. You got about 3 or 4 feet of floor pan, and then your frame starts for the back half of the car, you know, where your rear suspension and everything's at. So I mean, you got this whole, you know, 4-foot gap here of just nothing but floor pan. That's what's holding your car together. And then you got your, you know, your rocker panels out here to give you some support, and then you got the roof up there to give you some support. But effectively, I mean, the floor pan's it. You know, that's why these subframe connectors, that's why they install these, because, you know, it takes that flex and that twist out of the car. And, you know, when your floor pan is rotted, you're losing that support. And basically you're putting it all on the subframe connectors. I mean, they do their job, but at the same time, it's not the only thing you want to rely on. You want all the support you can get. So, I mean, you know, effectively that's what you ended up with. I mean, you don't want to deal with the problem when it started to rust in the floor. You know, he probably only had about 3 or 4 inch hole. You could have just cut that out, you know, welded a piece in, and slap some Krylon over the top of it, and it'd have been fine. But no, that's just, you know, the way people do things. But I'm gonna get back to work, and I just wanted to show you all that. So, as you can see, I pretty much got the whole pan welded in. No, not the best weld job I've ever done, but it'll do. Some people were like, well, why you even grinding those welds down? Ain't nobody gonna see it. Well, I know it'll be there, so it'll bug me. So I grind them down. Probably like that spot right there. Probably end up re-welding that. Don't know if it went through all the way, but still got this spot over here. I gotta, make something to put in that spot, and then that 90-degree lip that goes all the way down this part right here. I'm gonna have to make something for that, which brings me to a whole other point. Had an epiphany, and I should have known this, because I never throw my sheet metal away until the job is done. But I got this cross bracket, or actually the seat bracket for from the donor car. And what do I have here? I have 90-degree all the way down here. So I'll probably just cut this up here and then cut over here and just weld that piece in, and we're effectively done. Don't have to find some sheet metal and then bend it by hand, hammer and try to do all that crap when I could just take it out of that other part. It worked just fine. That's why you just don't ever throw away sheet metal until you are complete with the project, because it'll save your ass plenty of times. But for the most part, I'm done. Still gotta do the passenger side, fix odds and ends here, but I'm not gonna videotape all that because this would be just a ridiculously long video. And I think by now you probably get the point. The main takeaways here: you don't have to have expensive tools. You don't have to be the greatest damn welder. You just got to get the damn job done. I mean, it is what it is. It's floor pans. So, I mean, just fucking do it. Now, we were talking about a fender well, which I'm gonna have to do. That's a different story. Yeah, you got to be a lot more careful with those. But that's gonna be a later problem I'm gonna be tackling. So, I'll make another video when I get to that part. But anyway, that's all for now.